you miss me as much as I missed you? If this is your first time, hi, my name is Audrey, and this is the Fire and Fiber podcast where I talk about knitting, thrifting, mental health, social justice, whatever I feel like. I am still trying to figure out some of my lighting configurations. So normally I've been taking off my glasses when I've been filming because obviously there's a glare. I apologize. I need them on today. So it's getting distracting already for me. So I don't quite know how long they're going to stay on, but we're all just going to do our best. We are all just doing our best, and everything is going to be okay. I am a mother, I'm a healthcare worker, I'm a social justice advocate, and I'm coming to you from my home in southwestern Ontario on the Haldimand Tract, just down the road from the Six Nations of the Grand River. If you're not familiar, the Haldimand Tract was an agreement between Canadian colonizers and the Six Nations of the Grand River to grant them 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. Like every other treaty in Canada, this agreement has not been upheld. So like I said, I don't keep my setup up permanently, so this is always a labor of love and lots of configuration when I'm trying to get ready to film. In my last video, I had talked about my preferred row counting project tracking app for my knitting, which is my Row Counter. I did receive quite a bit of feedback from viewers around their desire for me to film a video talking about why I like my Row Counter, especially compared to other apps. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So this is not an affiliate or paid video. This is just my personal preference about this app. I have been a customer slash user of my Row Counter for, gosh, I want to say probably 5 or 6 years now, maybe a little bit less. I do pay for an annual subscription, so I do want to note that. I just double checked. So currently my Row Counter in Canada costs me $11.99 annually. That is Canadian dollars. I do know that there's also a monthly cost, but I just pay annually for ease of convenience. So I guess I've probably been using it for, I think I said 5, probably like 3 or 4 years. And I think the reason so if I'm remembering correctly, the initial reason why I was interested in this app in particular was because of its integration. So my Row Counter does have a free and a premium version available. Even the free version does have quite a lot of features that I really appreciate. I have tried other apps in the past. Probably about a year ago, someone had said to me like, oh, you're not using Knit Companion, you have to use Knit Companion. And I downloaded it, I tried it, it just wasn't for me. I think a big part of that is that I am already very comfortable using my Row Counter, and so as much as I tried using Knit Companion, it just didn't land for me, and that's okay. This is, again, my personal preference. Both the paid and the free version do come with quite a lot of features. My Row Counter does allow you to download patterns from a variety of sources, including your Ravelry library, as well as your Drive, like Google Drive, web pages, files, things like that. I'm not going to go into all the premium features. What I was asked about specifically was how I use my Row Counter and how I find it helpful. So we're going to go through that. So this is honestly, I would say, with the exception of like, I don't know. I mean, I could probably look. This is one of my most used apps on my phone and my iPad. I'm sure that my screen time, if I checked it, actually, I'll check it right now. Hold on. Yes, so I can confirm that my most used app of the week is, in fact, my Row Counter. I don't want to include too much of my information, but there you go. I use way too much screen time. This is not good. Don't follow me on that. But anyways, this is my app that I always have open because I'm almost always knitting. So what I wanted to do today was walk you through how I typically use the app if I were using it. So let's say I'm starting a new project. Okay, fabulous. I'm going to open my Row Counter, and the first thing I'm going to see is a landing page which has all my other projects going. So my Row Counter is great because you can have multiple project tracking at one time. So it'll show me my current WIPs or projects that I have going right now. In the bottom right hand corner, there's a button that says New Project. If I click on that, it brings me to a new project page. Forgive me, I'm going off my iPhone here. So the first thing I'm going to do is enter a title for my project. This is really good if I'm working on the same pattern multiple times for different projects. I'll name them each differently. And then it asks you for the type, whether it's knitting, crocheting, there's machine knitting on here, and loom. And then there's 2 spots below. It'll either say import pattern to your project or create project without a pattern. So when I've been test knitting, sometimes the pattern isn't available digitally yet, or I just haven't imported it. In the case of the current test knit I'm doing, it was sent out in a very large zip file, so I just didn't even bother trying to open it. I'm just using the tracker bit for my project. But let's say I'm creating a knitting project. I'm going to select knitting. I'm going to make a fake name, whatever. And then I'm going to click import pattern to my project. So from here, there is another page that will then show you either how to import from a personal source or from an external source. So the personal sources are patterns on your device, Dropbox, Google Drive, a photo, which I thought was really cool. And there's also an option to create a chart. Full disclosure, I haven't gone into that yet, but I do think that for my colorwork friends or designer friends, that would be a really cool feature. Most of the time, I'm importing from an external source. So the options I'm given are internet, my Ravelry library. It also gives you an option to search Ravelry. So for some reason, if you have a pattern that you know of that isn't in your library, let's say it's a free, whatever, you can actually search the name of the pattern. You can also import from YouTube, the Hobbii website, the Lovecrafts website, the Lion Brand website, KnitPicks, Drops Design, and then there's even a See More, which goes into even more options to import. So, not going to list them all, but let's say I'm going from my Ravelry library. It will bring up my Ravelry library, which I did have to sync with my Ravelry account initially. I had to grant permission. It'll then show me all of my library, my latest library acquisitions. If I remember correctly, it's going from most recent editions, but I can also just type in the search bar of whatever pattern I'm looking for. Just for argument's sake, I've opened up a new project and I'm going to be just pulling a random pattern. So this is the Pineberry. It gives you a landing page that looks like this, part of the lights, and it has the designer information, the name, the rating, the difficulty. It also includes suggested yarn, the quantity, all of the information you need to know ahead of time that you would normally see on the main Ravelry page of a pattern before you open up the actual file. So description, sizes, gauge, etc., etc., etc. It really depends on how much the designer includes on the Ravelry pattern page, but if there's a lot, it'll show up here. You can click through photos, whatever you want. So we're going to say download. It asks you as well if you want to import the suggested needle size. Yes or no. It'll tell you ahead of time what you need. And this is kind of nice if you're not like scrolling through the pattern. Sometimes it is difficult to find the needle size. I just say yes. And it will take a moment to download. So from here, this is our pattern page. So there are a few things to note on here. There is a global counter right at the top. So what that means is that my row counter actually has options for multiple counters within the same project. If you need to track on your sleeve the decreases as well as the rows, that's where you can use both. So the global counter, kind of think it is like the overall counter for that project. There's also a little timer. I can't think of the word, the little clock with the sand, you know, like from Aladdin. Ketamine brain. There's also one of those at the top. So if you are someone who really likes to time or track how much time you're spending on a project, you just start it and stop it from there. It's also got a little microphone for if you're using dictation to either like skip to the next row or whatever. So the pattern import is exactly as you would see it when you downloaded it, and you can scroll through pages like that. This does work horizontally or vertically. I am someone who never flips my phone horizontally, but you can. And so it does do both. Turn the lock back on because I loathe having it turned. And from here, there's a few other bits and pieces. So from my pattern page, you can just scroll down and start where you need to start. One of the things I like to do pretty regularly is either highlight or annotate. And so I believe the highlighter is not included on the free version, but the annotation option is. So if I were highlighting, there are three little buttons up at the top. There is a little, looks like a bookmark with a star. There's a highlighter, and then there's a pen. So if I wanted to go to highlight, it'll give me an option to highlight horizontally, vertically in the chart, and then it also gives you a setting button. Let's say I'm going horizontal. So I'd click that, and then it'll give you an option to drag the highlight line to where you need it, so you can still see the highlight. You can still see the pattern in the back. What I often will do is annotate my pattern. So I go over to the little pen, And then there's three options from there. It'll either say draw, annotate, or notes. I will click annotate, and then this one is a little bit hard to figure out. So you annotate and it says press long where you want to add an annotation. So I do that, and then it gives me a whole bunch of options. If I have made a modification to a pattern and I know I'm not going to remember it, let's say I did an inch on sleeve ribbing instead of an inch and a half, I could write this and it would superimpose it on top of my pattern as if I were writing it on the pattern itself. And it'll even include like little emojis, what color you want to include your note, etc., etc. So that one's called reminders. And then from there, you can go all the way through your pattern as you go. You can zoom in and zoom out. I feel like that's a pretty basic feature. There is a chat feature on here, so you can chat with other users. I've never enabled it, so I can't tell you about that, but whatever. There is a notes tab at the bottom, so if you wanted to write notes about the project or the pattern overall, you could put it in there. And then if you were, let's say you're working on a project that has more than one pattern, you can hit the bottom part that says patterns and add another pattern into the same project. So if you are pulling in a chart that's got color work, but you're also working on a pattern, like if you're trying to combine a sweater pattern with a color work chart, you can include both of these in the same project file on my row counter and then toggle between the two, which is kind of nice. The other thing is if you go into, there's a bottom little button that says settings. This is where you will see more options. So it talks about, like I said, the global counter, but also your secondary counter. It has an option to include pictures if you wanted. There is also, if you wanted to change the name of it, etc. It will also tell you on here your stats about the project. So when you started, what time, and when you finished it, all of that stuff. It even has, if you wanted to select, it's got a little toggle that says work in the round. If this is something you need to remember, that you're working in the round instead of working flat. It has a number of stitches on here, links. And then below, there is also, you can tag your project, you can add your stash to it, reset your timer, import, switch to PDF display. If you've forgotten what needle size you're using, you can click See Needles and it'll pop up that little needle portion from the beginning. The bottom has options for the project overall. So there is a duplicate section. Like I said, if I've been working on the same pattern for multiple projects, I can do that instead of importing and going through the whole process every time. There is a finish option. There is an option to print the pattern or delete it. So we're just gonna go to delete here, and it'll ask you if you want to also delete the associated stats. Yes, I do, whatever. There are a few more features on here that I don't use, but I think are worth noting. So at the top, it does give you some stats about your work. It includes how many stitches you've done, which I don't have that tracking on, so I have no idea. I guess if you really wanted to calculate that, you could based on your rows or whatever. I do have tracking when it comes to my rows. So every time I've clicked a new row, it will, currently it says I've completed 1.9 thousand rows. It's got a number of projects you've completed and the time elapsed since you've reset your counter. A couple other things I wanted to note on here too. So okay, here's a good example. So if I am changing my rows, so sometimes I might be at like a really high row count and then I need to switch, right? So let's say I'm at 16 and I need to go back to 0 because I'm in a new section. You just select the number in the middle of the global counter and it'll bring up a option to change the counter value, including typing it in, reset it, save a new value, but it also shows you what row you were on and the time before and what device. So if you have accidentally hit the wrong counter, or let's say you've left your phone open and your kid's playing with it, you can see the last time you made a change and go back to that, which is kind of helpful for if you're someone like me. I've forgotten to tick the next row. And so in that case, I can look at the timing and say, oh, okay, it's been 15 minutes since I did a new row. I know I started a new one 5 minutes ago. Tick, there, I'm good. There are a few other options on here that are kind of cool. There's a community, which I don't even have activated, so I have no idea how to use it. There is a tool section, so it's got a bit on swatch adapting. There's a pattern creator, yarn ball conversion. There's a converter on here for different units of measurements, which if you're in Canada like me, we use metric sometimes and imperial sometimes. There's a ruler, there's a needle hook size converter, as well as a stitch library. There's a smartwatch integration and there's a chart tool and library. So I don't have my Apple Watch down here. I do know that a lot of people enjoy the option to use the counter on their Apple Watch. It's just not something I use, but I do know that a lot of people really enjoy it, especially if you're knitting, 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 and then you just go boop, boop, boop instead of having to pause and instead of having to take your hand away and kind of tick your next row. Again, there is also a dictation option where you can say, okay, next row. I haven't used that. I've heard pretty good things about it. I don't bother because my house is so incredibly noisy all the time that I think it would actually make life a lot harder instead of easier. But anyways, the other great thing about my row counter, the reason that I really enjoy it is when you are on a premium subscription, you can actually toggle between devices. So this is great for me if I've got, let's say I'm watching something on my phone or my iPad or whatever, or if I'm traveling. It's really great, especially if I'm doing chart work and I have the chart on my iPad or bigger screen. It's really great to be able to continuously update my projects seamlessly without having to log in or pull up a device or whatever. It's a small thing, but it's definitely something that's worth it for me from a convenience point of view. Like I said, this is just a short and sweet summary of how I use my row counter. If you're considering it, I would recommend downloading the free version first, playing around and seeing if the paid features are something that you'd enjoy. The highlight feature, for example, is one that I thought I would use. I don't use it as much, but that's okay. I have used it, just not as much as I thought I would. Overall, I just enjoy having an ad-free experience, which to me just means I'm less likely to click on something that's going to take me to an external website that I don't necessarily want to go to. Teach their own. If you like this video, please do leave a thumbs up and a comment below. It does really help. If you're not already subscribing, please also do that. You can find me on Ravelry at Audrey Hill or on Instagram at Fire and Fiber Makes. Fiber spelled the American way. And I hope that wherever you are having a wonderful day. Stay safe and happy knitting.